And welcome everybody to God's Views on Political News. It's good to have you here with us again today. So glad that people, even if you're snowed in, like in North Carolina, you can still be here. How's the snow where you are?
Well, we got snowed out. We didn't get snowed in. We got snowed out. We were supposed to go to North Carolina. We were supposed to go over to Banner Elk and spend about I was supposed to be in North Carolina in a cabin, kicked back with just, my warm-up pants and my warm fuzzy socks, sitting by a fire, drinking some hot coffee. That's what I'm supposed to be doing right now, but I got snowed out. So here he is.
Well, we're glad that you're here. We're glad that you could come. I guess they got a lot of snow too, so it's probably good you didn't go. Marlene says Merry Christmas, by the way. So hello, Bill and Susan. And
hello, and happy Hanukkah to those who just came through that, like us. So we where we were going to go, they were like 19 inches, 20 inches of snow, Yeah. So I'm like, no, I'm not driving in that.
You didn't need the break, so you got snowed out for a reason, right? So,
I guess so. So here we are. Good day to everyone. Hello.
My friend who had moved to Maryville or Marvel, however you say it, in Tennessee, when the snow started coming down there in little flakes, she was all excited because she hadn't seen snow in so many years, but it went away in 2 seconds. So.
Well, that's usually the way it is around here. It'll snow and then, it'll warm up and it's gone. So just long enough for you to make a snowman. Pretty much.
Yeah, that's basically what they did. And then it was all gone. So.
And we like it that way.
Well, it didn't snow here. It was 70 degrees over the weekend. We were in shorts having a great time and thinking about you people in Tennessee and North Carolina, just so you know. We were thinking.
Okay, well, all things considered, we'll take the snow. You can have all the stuff that you got going on, okay?
Yeah, at least yours goes away after a while.
Yeah, ours melts away after a day. So,
Luann says hello to both of us. Happy Hanukkah to Bill because she knows that you don't celebrate Christmas. Tyson says hello to both. Brenda Liz says happy Hanukkah. Bethany gives us a thumbs up, so she's right in the middle there. Whatever for both of us, Christmas and Hanukkah.
she's just been nice. She's in a very good mood today. She was just in such a great mood today.
And
I like it when she's in a good mood.
That's because you're there and she's here.
No, you know what it is? It's because I shaved.
Oh, nice. Wow. If that's all you need to do, then you're a lucky man.
If I can just shave regularly and take out the garbage on time, I'm in
there you go. There you go. It's a secret to a long marriage. Nancy says hello to both of us too. And hi from Dawsonville, Georgia. Or is it Dawsonville? Georgia. Jean says, so welcome everybody. We're going to get right into talking about the border and the border situation. There was a meeting a few minutes ago with President Trump and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. God only knows I would not have wanted to be in that room. But of course, they were trying to figure out how they were going to get President Trump is serious about the border wall. He wants money for the border wall. And of course, the Democrats don't want money for the border wall. And President Trump is saying, you know what? I'm going to shut down the border, the government. If you don't give me the money for the border wall, I'm done with you people. And of course, Schumer and Nancy are saying, well, it's going to all be on you if you shut down the government. Because guess what? We're not in control of the Congress right now, even of the House. We won't be doing that until January. So if you shut it down, it's on you. Your thoughts about kind of what I've said so far?
So they're threatening him and by extension us with a government shutdown where all those people who go to Washington and screw everything up wouldn't be able to go to Washington and screw everything up. I can live with that.
Yeah, for a little while.
For a little while. My thing here is, and look, I'm not in Washington. I'm not in politics. I don't understand that game. I try to be common sense, try to think, with common sense. It seems to me he's tried every other tactic and everybody's blocked him all along. So, why not play hardball? Why not just say, okay, that's the way it's going to be? I mean, because if he's not going to, apparently not going to be able to do this through more conventional means, and it's particularly when Nancy Pelosi takes the gavel away, that's, I mean, it's just going to be an impasse. So go ahead. Why not just play hardball? I mean, that's how I see it. I saw something the other day, and it really made a lot of sense to me. There are times when you need Mother Teresa, and there are times when you need Dirty Harry. Yeah. And it seems to me that it's time for Trump just to say, go ahead, make my day.
Yeah. Well, the thing of it is, when we spend so much money, I mean, look at how much money we're spending down there at the border right now with the military. If you had this wall in place as high as they want the wall to go, as structurally sound as they want this border to be, we wouldn't be having to have our military down there at the border. By the way, they're taking away 2,200 of our military. They're removing them right before Christmas. So that does not leave me feeling good having the border more open right now. And I don't know if you read recently, but there was a woman who was 7 months pregnant who scaled that 10-foot wall, got over into the United States, and had her, an anchor baby. I mean, basically, she has a United States citizen now, and she and her family are going to be able to stay in the United States. I mean, that's the way it's going to be. So we need that wall. We've needed that wall for I don't know how long, forever, basically. And the Democrats don't want us to have that wall. Well,
they need new voters. They need to build their voter base. I mean, that's what it's all about. They know that they're gonna buy people's loyalty through these kinds of things. At least that's the way I see it, anyhow. Because I mean, what was it in '96? I think that was the right time frame. They basically approved, a border wall in theory, anyway.
Right.
And so, but now it's not politically expedient. They'd be better off to buy, these votes coming in because, in California, they're going to give these people who are undocumented opportunities to vote and do everything else. So that's kind of what they're doing. Anybody with common sense sees through that kind of thing. Anyhow, I hope Trump does mean business. I hope he really means what he says and puts his foot down. I saw him tweet out that if he doesn't get funding for a wall, he'll have the military build the wall or something to that effect. Right. I don't know if he can do that or not.
I don't know either. We've been down that road before, and they basically kind of said to him, "You can't do that. You can't use the government to do that."
Yeah. Well, it's a showdown, and my money's on Trump in that regard. Because I think he's been in a showdown before, and the other guy blinks first. So let's just hope that he has people around him, that are close to him, that are going to support him and not buckle and not weaken. Because he needs that support. I don't care how strong he is. I think as a human being, he just needs to know there are people around him who are going to stand behind him.
Well, the one thing I think too, hearing Nancy Pelosi, and I try to avoid these press conferences they have at all costs, but I wanted to be able to talk about what they were saying today in order to bring it to everybody on the show. But she was saying, when we take over in January, it's going to be, the government's going to be run differently. You're going to see how wonderful it's going to be. There's going to be transparency. I mean, listening to these people. She is still on that again. It's going to be transparency. We're not going to have something that is going to be put on the American people and thrust on them without them being able to read it or having hearings to know what it's about. And these people seriously forget that we have an ability to record things, so that we can go back and see that she was saying these same things under Obama when they gave us Obamacare without anybody seeing it.
Well, we have to pass it to see what's in it, right?
Exactly. And they go ahead and they say stuff, and they lie to themselves. They lie to the American public. I guess they think that the American public is that stupid, but if
I think President I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No.
But yeah,
no, Robert,
I do think.
Robert said, "Don't make me sick, Susan." When we were talking about Nancy Pelosi. Go ahead, Bill.
I don't know if there's a throw up emoji on there or not, Robin. But
there should be.
No, I look, when she takes over, they're going to have the House.
Yeah.
And which means they may draft and pass a bill, and it goes to the Senate. And guess what's going to happen in the Senate? Most likely, That's exactly right. And should it pass the Senate, guess who's got a pen that they can veto it? And I doubt very seriously that they're going to be able to override his veto at this point in time. That is, unless a lot of Republicans jump ship. But it's going to be 2 years of back and forth. That's what it's going to be, and it's just going to be who's got more determination. So all those are throw up emojis, right?
I think everybody's showing you the throw up emoji there. There, you got it. You got your win. The thing of it is too, with the border, Senator Cruz and a couple of other senators came up with some good ways to solve this whole problem. Nancy Hubbard said, I can't stomach listening to nor watching Nancy Pelosi. It's difficult, Nancy. It's really difficult. I took it for the team here, took one for the team and listening to her. But what Cruz has said, he announced a bill. It's called the Wall Act, and it's really a pretty good bill. And of course, nobody's talking about it because nobody on the Democrat side wants this thing to go through with the wall. But he said they can fund this wall. His bill would give President Trump $25 billion to fund this wall, and at the same time saving us $33 billion. And he says the way to do it is that you have to require everybody coming in, all the people who are coming into the United States, everybody to have a social security number if they want to work, and be required to claim, if they want to claim refundable tax credits or anything like a child tax credit, you have to have a social security number. Now, you can buy one of those. I hate to tell Senator Cruz that, but I mean, he's got the right idea. Their welfare recipients would be required to verify their citizenship, and those minimum fines would be increased for people who illegally cross the border, and a minimum penalty will be established for those who overstay their visas. And he goes, this is closes loopholes that would allow illegals to receive federal funds. Think about that. $25 billion right here, saving the country $35 billion. Why isn't everybody embracing this bill?
Because common sense has been replaced with nonsense. That's why. Why does Washington do 75% of the things they do or not do? Because common sense says otherwise. I would hope that with expanded majorities in the Senate, maybe it would get a little traction. Of course, in the House, it's probably not going to go anywhere, unfortunately. But, I don't know. The answer to your question. I guess it's rhetorical. It would make too much sense to do something that makes sense.
Right. And we're not even talking about it. I think mainstream media, only on the conservative side, have I even heard anything about the bill. I wouldn't have known about it had I looked anyplace else. Because it's going to be the thought on the left is going to be, oh my gosh, we can't do that. This will disenfranchise people from having benefits that they need or they want or they should have or we deem them to have.
Well,
that's going to be the line.
Well, again, they need to build their voter base. Mm-hmm. That's what's going on there. They're going to buy someone's political loyalty by giving them all this quote unquote free stuff. As far as Cruz, the only thing I see him being mentioned in the media about is his beard. So,
I know.
I mean, this is crazy. So he's talking about all these other things, and all they want to do is talk about his beard. And by the way, not a very good one. But
I have a differing opinion. I think he looks better with a beard. Keep the beard.
Oh, I'm not getting into that territory. I'm just saying. Never mind. Shut up, Bill.
Yeah, but all joking aside, we need to have people in Congress who come forward and say, this is how you solve the problem. I mean, that's what Congress is there for, to solve the problem. And Nancy Pelosi, hate to say it again, but said, we want to work, we want to extend an olive branch. We want to work together with President Trump. And we've told him we want to work with you and helping you do things when we take over the House. But if you don't want to do it, then we'll be always as we've always been, and that's upstanding, ethical, moral, and all the other stuff that really the throw up emojis are there for.
Well, if she meant that, that'd be great. I mean, that'd be great.
It would be great.
but I'm looking at, on the Trump side, here's a guy that was just really, what's the word, caustic, where Rocket Man was concerned.
Right.
But when it actually come down to working with somebody and talking with somebody, we will see how things actually turn out in the time to come. But so far, it would seem that all of that rhetoric, all that running around, when it came down to it, Trump was ready to sit down with somebody who was willing to sit down and come to some kind of terms. Again, there's still, it's some uncertainties there yet, but at least we're not on the throes of, rockets being fired at Japan or the west coast of the United States. So he has that in his, on his side of the ledger now. Also with this thing with China, the tariff war, and everybody was talking about how he was going to ruin the economy. Well, he got the Chinese to the table, and at least there are discussions as how they can, kind of ramp down a little bit on this tariff war and maybe lift some of those things, at least for a brief period, until everybody can kind of come back and come to terms. What I'm saying is, when it comes right down to it, it seems to me that Trump is willing to work with people. It seems that he is willing to meet people halfway and come to some kind of an agreement that everybody can be happy with. So if Pelosi really means that, then I think Mr. Trump has a history that says he's willing to do that as well. So we shall see. I'm not going to hold my breath, but we'll see.
But I think, that President Trump is the only one who's trying to reach agreements with people. He's the only one that's trying to solve problems. He's the only one that brings these things up and tries to get an answer to. Congress, who's sitting over there, what have they done? We want DACA passed. We want to do all these wonderful things for DACA. Haven't even done anything. They had 8 years under Obama. They've had time to do it now. They don't want to do it. So they're not, what are they doing in Congress? My question is, other than having these committees where they bring people before these committees, talk to them, and then do nothing afterwards, what is Congress doing? And that's a serious question.
Yeah, from what I've seen, and I mean this in all seriousness, slapping one another on the back, even those who are across the aisle that they're supposedly at odds with, slapping one another on the back, calling them buddy, chum, and pal, and going to cocktail parties. And I mean that very literally. Yeah. I'm not being sarcastic.
No, I know.
Anyway.
Alan said they only pretend to solve the problems they create, which is true. Darlene said they create problems so they will always be needed to solve them. Solving them makes them less needed. And Darlene, that is absolutely the truth. I mean, if that's what elites do. That's why they are in power and want to be in power. They act like they have the solution, and they don't want the people to figure out the solution, because then they wouldn't be needed. Don Schultz said they don't want to solve problems. They want to keep power. And that's what it really kind of all boils down to. And Don was just agreeing that, that's just so true. And Robin said they're collecting a paycheck. They really are. And the sad part is we allow them to continue to collect that paycheck. We really do.
Well, we do. And the reason for that is, Susan, and I don't want to take us too far off topic, is that you've got an electorate that is illiterate as far as how this country, what it's about, how it was established, how the system is supposed to work. Just the very fact that people continue to insist that we live in a democracy, when the founders of this nation absolutely abhorred the thought of direct democracy. They wanted a constitutional republic. They wanted the people to be represented, yes, and to have their voice heard, but within the parameters of law, not mob rule. So you have an electorate that is illiterate in the sense that they don't know how things are supposed to work. And then you have politicians who are more than willing to exploit that ignorance, to propagate that ignorance, because that's what keeps them in power. Because you have these people who hear, oh, if you vote for me, you can have this, you can have that. We're going to give you this. We're going to give you free stuff. The Bernie Sanders and what's the young lady from New York? I can never remember her name. That's going around talking about stupid stuff, giving everybody free stuff. Yeah, right. Yeah. And then, but you have this politically, civic illiterate, I'll get it out in a minute, illiterate people in the electorate who keep putting these people back in power. I probably made up a few words along the way there, but hopefully you know what I meant.
Dawn said that it is, let's see, it's not getting better. Kids are more interested in playing with their phone than learning about anything in public education. And Dawn, that is the key for elites to stay in power. As long as you are, as Bill's talking about, illiterate, as long as you are fighting each other, they can stay in power. Darlene said, I love Gerardo's comment about being smarter than us and how it's hard to explain and connect with people who don't quite get what they understand. Boy, and her statement, if that's not an elitist talking with their nose in the air, then I don't know what better example there is. Linda said, is it possible that all supporters of Trump and we all cut out the middleman government and send $20 to the White House to build the wall? It's not going to happen, Linda, because we need Congress in there to approve things that you know, like he wants to do, like building the wall. I mean, we do kind of need that, because you're talking about immigration. Congress has to be involved in some respect, because that's their purview. That's what they're supposed to do. How much of it he could do without Congress, I'm not sure. I mean, I think if he could say that we are under attack and that it's absolutely needed to protect the United States, I think that the president has the power to do that. And of course, he will be fought at every turn. And Dawn said Ocasio-Cortez is going to use her power to punish the little people. And Robin said, if possible, homeschool your kids. And Dawn said, I know some people are so shocked that we live in a republic and they don't know and understand what a republic is. Sounds like to me like the education on history is failing. Bethany said, democracy equal rule by popular vote of the people. Republic is rule in best interest of people. And Monique said, as long as the children are dependent on the government and all the freebies, they will stay in power. That's the whole ball game, folks. Basically, it is. And Dawn said, democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Ben Franklin.
Well, while we're throwing out quotes, I wanted to, to say something. Read a quote here from Ronald Reagan as it relates to what the Democratic senator from Hawaii said. What's her name? Hirohito?
Hirano.
Oh, no, Hirano. Okay. History fans, do you understand what just happened? Anyway, here's what Ronald Reagan said to that Democratic position. It isn't so much that liberals are ignorant. It's just that they know so many things that aren't so. And that's still true today. And, so back to Pelosi and the things going on with the border wall, I think we've kind of summed it up that it's really not in their best interest to solve this problem. It obviously, or at least it seems obvious to me, that President Trump is looking at it long term. He's got children, he's got grandchildren, and I think he sees it in those terms. That if he or we don't do something about this issue right now, then his grandchildren are going to be suffering for it. His family is going to be suffering for it. And by extension, we as an American family are going to be suffering for it. And so the problem needs to be solved. It's not in Congress's best interest to solve the problem.
Now, Bethany said, Alan says, two enemies of the people, criminals and government. So let us tie the second down with the change of the Constitution so it does not become a legalized version of the first. Thomas Jefferson. Great words. Again, I heard Nancy Pelosi talking about the founders and what they wanted and how the Democrats wanted to get back to what the founders wanted. That made me ill hearing her say that, because I know she couldn't even name a founder probably if she wanted to, and does not even believe in the Constitution. The Democrats have done nothing but try to get rid of the Constitution under Obama. They didn't even believe in the Constitution and wanted, like Obama said, that it was just a rag, an old rag or whatever that we needed to kind of get rid of or revamp or whatever. It's amazing what we're going to be going into, what we're going to continue to see and hear, and how things are going to get worse. One other thing I want to mention, on the southern border before we talk about another border, is that yesterday in San Diego, there were like 30 some faith leaders that were arrested down there at the border, because all of these, like a group of 300 people, mostly, faith-based leaders, went down to Mexico and at the border and were demonstrating about, how we need to have we'll allow these people in. Again, we've got our own leaders who are supposed to be pastors, are supposed to follow God's word, are trying to tell Americans they need to open up the borders, allow people in that maybe shouldn't even be here. We don't even know who all of these people are. My thoughts to them, when I saw that is, why didn't you just walk across to Mexico? If you want to help those people and you say that you're this, a faith-based leader and we want to feed them, we want to clothe them, we want to give them a better life, step across to Mexico and do what you say that you think these people should have. Why didn't these faith-based leaders do that?
Well, because I don't think they're faith-based. That's
Exactly.
that's a persona, they're there to be political activists. They're there for a photo op and all those kinds of things. I realize that this statement will probably make some people mad, but at this point, as things are today, I do not understand how anyone who calls themselves a believer, a Christian, who actually believes the Bible is true, I don't see how anyone who says that and professes that could vote Democratic. I don't see how they could support any Democratic candidate at this point based on what the Democratic Party is all about. I mean, just the other day, the head of the DNC complained that people are being influenced by the pulpit. Now think about that. He was complaining that these people in the populace are being influenced by the pulpit, and that's a bad thing. And we as Democrats need to do something to counter that. In history teaches us that one of the main reasons the shot heard round the world was fired at Old North Bridge in Concord is because the pastor there had been teaching people about liberty, how the Bible is a book of laws, but it's a book of laws that is ensuring people's liberty, their life, and, if you will, the pursuit of happiness. And so this pastor there in Concord was inspiring these Minutemen to take a stand against tyranny. So the pulpit from the very beginning of our country has been front and center when it comes to shaping and forming and framing what this country was to be. I mean, Winthrop on the decks of the Arbella was talking about how and I'm paraphrasing him, how this country, it wasn't the United States then, but how this country was in a covenant with God, and that if we would obey him, then we would be a shining city upon the hill. But if we turned our back upon him, we would be a byword and a story among the nations. My point is, these guys going down there and supposedly pastors and evangelists and faith-based people, if they're supporting these democratic principles and agendas, then to me, they're not faith-based. They're politically based. That's what they are.
Now, Luann said she's 65, and last week she went to the Social Security office to apply. She said, I could count only a handful of people my age. Everyone else was young, who looked healthy enough to get a job. Darlene said that playing moral guide and compassionate do-gooder would go out the window. They might have to do good things for the citizens they represent. What an idea. That's when we were talking about Congress. Monique said, can I just tell you what a huge breath of fresh air this program is? I was totally stressed out a few minutes ago because of the political madness going on, and now I feel like I'm walking on air. So thank you, Bill and Susan. Your program and everything you have to share is much appreciated. A best dose of sanity I'll take any day over political madness. Thank you, Monique.
Yes, very kind of you, Monique.
Very kind. Darlene said they're raking in millions by resettlement payments, and of course they don't want them to stop. They're talking about that's the faith-based people. There are 9. We've talked about this before. There are 9 organizations, faith-based organizations, that when these people come over illegally from Central America and other places or come in on asylum, they get over $2,000 a head of those people that come in to the organization from government funds. So they're making good money. And when you were talking about the pulpit, Dawn said if people were influenced by the pulpit, we wouldn't be in such a mess. True. And Amanda was saying, how can believers support a party that supports abortion and all the other liberal agenda items, which is a point you were making, and she was agreeing with that. Nancy was saying all of these elitists take for granted they will have the health, wealth, and prestige. They don't have any clue from one day to the next. There's only one we know that is truly in charge. Given the Torah portion we just studied, keeping our faith and the bad things ultimately become the good. For he works all things to work to the good. At times it's difficult to keep that in mind. Joseph did for many, many years. So let's see, I've said the same thing, Bill. Evie said, you can't be a true believer of the Bible and God and be a Democrat. And again, as we're talking about the Democrats, we're talking about those people, the progressive left, the
Right.
elitists, the globalists, those people, not your everyday Democrat who again, they're looking at it and going, I don't even recognize my own party, for the most part.
We're talking about the platform that the Democratic Party has established, the persona that they are presenting to the American public, the things they're taking on as their purposes, their campaigns, their crusades, DACA, abortion, LGBTQ, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever all that stuff is. All of these things that are, and I don't have to look very far to find, anti-biblical, unscriptural, lawless, godless, despotic, tyrannical. I don't have to look far. It's not a gray area. That's what we're talking about. I understand that the just average day-to-day person who might be in the Democratic Party, that doesn't necessarily define them. By the way, my saying that does not automatically say that I endorse everything the Republican Party stands for. In fact, I have a whole laundry list of stuff that I'm disappointed in, disgusted with, where the Republican Party is concerned. But at the very least, at this point in time, as far as I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, their platform is not to be pro-abortion. Their platform is not to be necessarily be pro-LGBTQ and all this other stuff.
Well, and Darlene saying that this is talking about the Democrats, their platform has developed over time because of compromise, something we should take as a warning.
Amen.
And we have been compromising for a really, really long time. I mean, it used to be that we knew when you said conservative, you knew what that meant. You knew that it meant that you followed the Bible. Now, Bill, I mean, and this is, I'm reading a lot on this. Now, even the pastors and rabbis and other people are trying to change your thought about what certain things are, thoughts about what the biblical principles are. So like conservatives, oh, you're just a little bit too conservative on that. You need to change your mind a little bit. Broaden your mind about maybe what that biblical principle means. No, we need to not compromise. We need to stay the course and know what the biblical principles are and not be persuaded by the evil that is trying to change the minds of Christians and others about what the Bible means.
This thought comes to mind, and give me, if you don't mind me going into this for just a moment. When Ronald Reagan came into office, and everybody out there knows I'm a Reagan fan. When Reagan came into office, they painted him to be a cowboy, a maverick. He was going to start World War III. And basically because he was someone who had principles and had certain convictions about things as it relates to what America is and what America should be and our mission in the world. And by the way, he is the one who echoed John Winthrop when he talked about America being a shining city on a hill. I mean, he really took that message to heart, obviously. Yep. Now, right. I don't agree with everything that Ronald Reagan did and every position he took on every little thing, okay? But when it came to what seems to be his mission as the American president, and that was to be strong and steadfast in resisting what he called the evil empire, he's the one who actually was that strong personality that brought an end to or collapse of the Soviet Union. And he did it because he didn't waver. He didn't change definitions. He didn't kowtow to those who were placing all this pressure on him. All right. So here's where I'm going with this. We're kind of having a replay of that today in some way. And so you've got all these people who want what they think is peace. They want a ceasefire is really what they want. They want everybody just to get along. Right. Sometimes that's impossible until there is a conflict. And so along comes a Donald Trump, who is obviously a warrior. And so I've come to believe, Susan, that while Reagan's, I think, heavenly mandate was to be steadfast so that we could see the collapse of the Soviet Union, I'm at the place of thinking that maybe Donald Trump's heavenly mandate is to stand in the way of globalism taking over before it's time. Right. Okay. Before it's time. You understand?
Yep, I do.
Okay. And all of these things that we're talking about are facets of this overall battle, this war that we see going on. And, the Democrats have become the enemy within, as far as I'm concerned. And again, let me qualify that. The Nancy Pelosi's, the Chuck Schumers, the Cory Bookers, the Kamala Harris's, these are the people we're talking about. Yeah. They're the enemy within, and this is what the president and what others who believe in what the president's trying to do, and people like you and me who believe in the Bible, that believe in the principles, they're the enemy. And yes, I think Trump is correct. And I know I'm trying to stay online here, but I'm bringing something else into the conversation. The media, by and large, is complicit in this campaign against these biblical values. So they are an enemy. Now, not freedom of the press, that's not the enemy, but the media and the way they are being complicit in this, they are an enemy of what is good, what is virtuous, what is right. So then we need to, if we have a president who's willing to face these things down, we can let these rabbis and these pastors and these so-called faith-based leaders sway us to think that it's okay to compromise. We can allow for these things as long as we're being civil and we have a smile on our face. God's going to be happy with it. No, sometimes it takes a person or a group of people to say no and to stand these things down. All right, I'm through preaching.
Now, Karen said, true Christians need to be earnestly praying daily that God's will be done in our country as well as the rest of the world. Absolutely. And let's see here. Nancy said, as much as replacement theology has infiltrated scripture teaching, this world, this government thrives in the dark, nothing but mushrooms and fungus. That.
Oh, that's one way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and we were talking about that. I was talking with other people earlier today. I think that the evil that exists in our world, that the evil that we don't know about, we know about the tip of the iceberg of what's so evil in our world. If we knew what was really, all of it and how bad it really is, I don't think many people could handle it. I really don't. Yeah. And I think we're all, President Trump has done a lot to open everybody's eyes to the evil in the world. And in what he's opened our eyes to see, we're only seeing, the top layer of that, as bad as that is. Jonathan said, time to be under the rule of the Most High God. Darlene said he had standards, peace, then sudden destruction. Jonathan said, a lot of people agreeing with what you were saying. And Monique said they are the true enemies within, and when they take office again, they will do more harm to our nation. Even the people who kept them in office will be shocked. I think what's coming, the Democrats have been in charge before. At different elections, we have a Republican one time, a Democrat the next. But I think where we are in the world today, and where we are in what's going on in politics, I think we're going to see a part of hell unleashed. And I mean that literally in some respects in January. I think we're going to see things that we've never seen before happening in our Congress, in our politics.
I would not be surprised. My opinion is that if we think that we have seen antagonism and this war, this sense of war that is going on in this country, we haven't. It's going to pale in comparison to what we're going to see. Yes. As long as they have any kind of power, that is not to say they're going to win necessarily. It's just to say that we're going to see an all-out war. And what it says to me is, okay, God put somebody in position who's willing to fight. Okay, how many of us are willing to fight? How many of us are willing to face down those things and those enemies and those adversaries? And by the way, if you're a believer, that means you need to be prepared to give an answer, not from your opinion, not from your head, but you need to be able to tell somebody and speak to somebody from your heart, because you know what the word says. It's one thing to preach theology. It's another thing to preach the word. And this is an admonition that Paul gave to Timothy, because he said there was coming a day when people wouldn't listen to the truth. People wouldn't listen to common sense. They had all these fables and myths that they preferred, and say, they'll go looking for somebody to tell them all those things, like some of those faith-based pastors maybe that you were referring to. And I don't know who they are, but anyway, we've got to be prepared to fight in that sense. We've got to be prepared to give people an answer. When people are uncertain, confused about what's going on, yes, even politically, we need to be able to give them a direct and true answer, and at the very least plant a seed in their heart and mind, because that's where it's going to start. What we're in right now did not happen overnight. The seeds were planted long ago, and now we're beginning to see the fruit of that. So we've got to be warriors in this sense, equipped and prepared and willing to fight this battle.
Now, Bethany said the spirit of Antichrist had free reign in the last administration. And I agree with that, Bethany. And I think that the Antichrist, spirit of Antichrist still has free reign in the Trump administration, it within that administration and with the Democrats that are in the administration. It's not that President Trump knows about, who those people are or whatever, but there are people that every single solitary second of the day, even in his own administration, work against him. And by doing that, so work against the American people. And I believe the Democrats spend every waking hour in Congress working and doing the same thing, working against the president and against the people in America, because they don't care about us. We're not a part of their plan. Now, Jean said persecution will help purify the church. And let's see. Paula said we need to get busy as Christians. Our window is closing for free speech and teaching the truth. The Bible will be labeled as hate speech. Absolutely. And it already is in a lot of respects. Dawn said be ready in season and out of season. If you love your life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life, you will find it, Jonathan said. And Bethany was saying so true. Go ahead, Bill. I think you're.
I just saw a comment that Alan had made that I thought was, good. He says a Maccabees type fight, and what he's referring to is the story of Hanukkah. And to summarize that, at least is what I'm taking away from it, Alan. The Maccabees. This is where we get the story of Hanukkah, as I said. The Maccabees were being told by a tyrannical government, a godless government. You can't do this. You can't worship God. You can't follow his instructions. You're going to live the way we tell you to live. You're going to worship what we tell you to worship. And so finally, there was this small group of people who became known as the Maccabees who stood up and said, no, enough. And they took farming tools, they took whatever weapons they could find, and they stood up to these people. And it took them 3 years, but they overcame a far superior force. They ran them out of Jerusalem, they ran them out of Judea, and they went and they cleansed the temple. And of course, that leads to other components of the story of Hanukkah. But the point Alan is making, I believe, if I can speak for you, Alan, is that we're in a very similar situation. Historical patterns are repeating themselves. God allowed the Greeks to do what they did, to oppress his people, to lord over his people, perhaps to push his people to the point they realized, if we're going to be able to live the life that God gave us to live, the way he wants us to live it, guess what? We're going to have to fight for it. We're going to have to stand up. We're going to have to say, no, we're not going to let you cross this line. That's it. They've had their Popeye moment. I heard somebody say not too long ago. They said, I've had all I can stands and I can't stands no more. So that's what he's saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what you're saying. And I believe that's what God is saying to us through all these different events. The time is now.
Well, and one of the things that I've been talking about for a little while now, that it's really starting to concern me, is the fact that I'm seeing people on Periscope. I'm hearing people talk about it on TV. I'm watching some talk show people and other people who are starting to get a little bit like this when it comes to President Trump, meaning, well, the way he talks, it would be better if he just kind of laugh it off. Rush Limbaugh referred to that as being wobbly. He's saying Republicans are getting wobbly. They're backing off a little bit from President Trump. People that were totally on the Trump train and now starting to get off the Trump train, starting to back up a little bit and saying, well, I'm just not quite sure. I'm nervous about that for the 2020 election. What I want to see, and I've wanted to see it for so long now, I want to see Republicans coming together. I want to see Republicans, looking at what President Trump has done and saying this man is a nationalist. This man loves his country. This man loves the American people. Is he perfect? No. We've talked about that before. Can he give us everything that he promised? He's trying. I mean, look at today. He's gone in there and he's talked to Schumer and Nancy trying to get money for the wall. He's tried every single solitary day, it seems, to get money for that wall. He's doing what he can do to help the American people. When are we, as conservatives, as Republicans, as God-fearing people, when are we going to have his back? I'm not saying that we haven't in the past, or that we haven't done some things, but we've got to be stronger and stand stronger than we are right now. I see some people fading away, and that's not a good thing.
Well, on the political plane, yes, I agree with you. In Bible speak, the wobbly that Rush, or the way Rush defines it or describes it, in Bible speak, that would be lukewarm.
Yes.
You're not cold, you're not hot, you're lukewarm. Well, the Messiah says, and now he's not talking about politics, mind you.
Right.
And he's talking about people who are following him, or supposed to be following him. He says, I will spew you from my mouth. In other words, he can't use lukewarm.
Exactly.
I would say that the same principle applies here. You can't use lukewarm or the wobbly. And so in terms of numbers and how that converts into, votes and things like that, I agree with you. On the other hand, I think it's important to perhaps look at it this way as well. Anytime God has done something, and we've already established in past programs that we believe that God has put Donald Trump in office as the president, right?
Right.
We agree with that, right?
Yeah.
And so God's got a purpose for the man, right? So if God's got a purpose and that purpose is yet to be fulfilled, in other words, if he's not done with what it was he was supposed to do, then it could also be, Susan, and I'm not going to be dogmatic about this, but it also could be that God is weeding out those people who are lukewarm. It might be that he's removing it because they're not useful. They're not good. They make you sick to your stomach. You got to get rid of that. And well, you do, because you won't be able to trust them. You won't be able to count on them in the heat of the battle. And you don't want them turning on you when it's the thickest. The battle is the thickest and it's the hottest. And it's like Braveheart. He's at a place in the movie where he's ready. They're just on the threshold of beating the English back and throwing them out of Scotland. And in the midst of that battle, he's betrayed by those who were wobbly. Yeah. He's betrayed by those who are lukewarm. So I'm going to look at it that maybe, possibly, it could be that what we're seeing is he's thinning out those that are wobbly, those that are lukewarm, if you will. And he's whittling it down to the 300 who were actually prepared to go to battle. You remember the story of Gideon. There's a whole lot of people that showed up to fight. But when it actually came time for the battle, God told Gideon, all these guys over here, they're not going to fight. Here's the people you need to be choosing for your fight. And it was a small group, but it threw all that far superior force into chaos and disarray. Is that the way it's going to happen? I'm not prophesying that. I'm not predicting that. I'm not being dogmatic about that. Could it happen that way? Yeah. It absolutely could. If those that believe in God's purposes and overall for this country, for this president, for you, for me, for our families, if we stand up for righteousness, if we contend for the kingdom of heaven, if we stand up for what is good and holy and virtuous, we may be few, but with God, we are a majority. And so I understand exactly what you're saying. And like I said, on the political plane, I agree with you 110%, but I don't want to discount the fact that God might be doing something and we can still put our trust and confidence in him. Do what we're supposed to do.
Exactly.
Do what we're supposed to be. Be steadfast and stand strong. But let's also remember that he's the one who can take a few people and do mighty and great things.
No, but that's good. That's good encouragement, to remember that, because I look at it, I'm discouraged by seeing Republicans that won't stand together, that won't stand up, that at the simplest drop of a hat, they're like, okay, well, I'm done. That's it. And so it could be God just weeding those people out and just saying, you're not going to be helpful, so you can just move on. Karen was saying, if only conservatives would stand together the way liberals do, And that's, what we've been talking about. And Luann said, wimpy Christians are saying this, and I'm worried too, Susan. Amanda said, I agree, Susan. Some have ridden the Trump train long enough just to get reelected or really popular. And Monique was saying, right, yes, I do believe the same, Bill, and other people are agreeing with you. And Jonathan said, it's time to pray like Daniel, including himself with the sins of our nation. And Linda said, not built, but servants who will be active are already trained. Furniture and garments are done. Just the site. She was talking. Somebody had asked a question about the temple. Has the temple been rebuilt? No, the temple has not been built. The altar is being built. The practice altar is being built, from what I understand. But anyway, it is absolutely true that we have to do our part. We have to continue to stand. We have to be strong. We have to support people. People think that when you say you support the president, that you agree with every single thing that he does. No, I don't. And nobody else does either. But what they agree with are the principles that he's putting forward, because the principles are the principles that, God would have us do. We're not to open our borders. We're not to let the enemy in, or anybody else who wants to come in and maybe destroy America. That's biblically sound as well. Mm-hmm. And we have to, for us, keep standing strong and supporting the president, because in so doing, we are supporting biblical principles and the republic, our own country. So I think that's the part that people fail to see. And I think those people who are jumping off and saying, oh, maybe we better look at somebody else, they've missed the entire point, Bill. They've missed the entire point of what God has done. And they miss the entire point of what is at stake.
Well, everybody who's listened to this program for any length of time knows how I feel about some of the things that Trump says and has done in times past in his past life. Okay. But I'm not so much interested in what he says at this point as much as what he's doing. And by that, I mean on behalf of the country. It's the fruit that he's producing that matters most to me, not so much that he says things that make me want to stick pencils in my eyes, but what he's doing and where the border security issue falls and his position on that and what he's tried to do there as it relates to Israel, to Jerusalem, and how the stand that he's taken there in the face of the world's ire and disdain. So those things, those actions, the fruit, what he's doing tells me that God is doing something.
Right.
And I'll even go so far as to say it's really not Trump. Trump's just the vehicle. Trump is just the vessel. Now, it's important that God gets the right vessel in the right place at the right time, but he's just the vessel in that regard. And so those are the things that I'm looking at. And that's what got me on the Trump train of late, not so much Trump, but what God is doing through Trump, with Trump. And I don't want to be resistant to what God may be doing at this point in time.
Well, and he's a vessel like the rest of us. When God uses us to do his will, we're just vessels too, that. And so he's just a man like the rest of us, but he is being used for God's purpose, just like we are. And I think people, some people, some conservatives maybe who aren't Christian, don't see that. Bethany said, we and many we know are going through a weeding of the complacent on a personal level as well, perhaps in preparation to stand on a greater level for our country. Good point. Darlene said, it's not just about us either. It's about other nations as well being sucked up in the vortex of globalism.
Good point.
Good point. Linda said, I don't think Trump knew what he was getting into. I don't think he knew how evil could be, although he had known these people on a personal level. So he knew kind of what they were capable of. So he knew more than we did, I think, going in, if we had gone in. Now, Nancy said, if and when any nation would actually honor, guard, and follow the Torah, then and only then, that's what I keep my hope in. One day it will be manifest. Until then, we endure, stand, and pray. Bethany says our eyes are to be on God and not fallible men anyway. Absolutely. Robin said, I'm with Bill. That's what put me on the Trump train. So she got on the Trump train, the same way that you did. So one of the things I want to touch on, because we are a little short on time, when we were talking about the border, one of the things I wanted to bring up is that we're so focused on the southern border. And I think because of the time and the season that we're in, we may have to start focusing on our northern border. That alarms me in a way, because if we can't even get our southern border secured because the Democrats don't want to go along with a wall or whatever, how in the world are we ever going to get our northern borders secured if we need to? We're not going to get money for that. The reason being, in Canada right now, there are a lot of radical Islamists, ex-ISIS fighters, extremists that Canada is welcoming with open arms. The prime minister there is saying, "Come on in, we'll love you." And those people who don't open their arms to you and say they love you, they're Islamophobic and they're racist.
And eventually we'll put them in jail. No, seriously.
We will.
No. I'm talking about in Canada. They're working to put people who would say things against.
Oh, those people, yes.
They'll put you in jail. One of the first times when I went to Canada to speak, I won't say where and when, but I was told, Bill, whatever you do, don't talk about homosexuality and Islam. And I said, why? Because there will be people here that are here just to hear what we're talking about, and they will go back and they will tell government officials, and we'll get in a lot of trouble. So, but to your point of the northern border, and I'm sorry if I interrupted you, I want you to consider this, and we'll have to do this kind of quickly. Remember this: the adversary, Satan, the devil, whatever you want to call him, who works through people like progressives and the atheists and the Marxists and the communists, etc. He is an illusionist. And an illusionist wants you to look at this hand, this one here, where he's got the handkerchief, he's got the bouquet of flowers. This is the hand he wants you looking at, because he doesn't want you to look at this hand. He wants you to pay attention to the southern border, because he doesn't want you watching the northern border. Because you think this is the trick hand, but it's not.
Right.
It's this one. It's this one. And this is his tactic from the very beginning of time. And there's another concept that's in Scripture that I think is very important to point out in light of what you said. And that is, when Israel was being attacked, the danger always came from the north. Never from the east, never from the south, always from the north, because that's where they were more exposed. So take that and do with it what you will.
Well, there's a lot of parallel between the United States and Israel. That's all I have to say. One of the there's a couple, experts that are over there in Canada right now and watching the situation, and they say that it is a matter of time that the United States will have a major attack coming from those people that are in Canada and are being allowed to stay there. That's, for me, I think of 9/11. Like, we're going to have another 9/11. I haven't heard anywhere, and I mean anywhere in mainstream media, anything about any problems coming from Canada. Not one peep.
Well, I know a lot of Canadians, a lot of great people live up there. A lot of God-fearing people live in Canada, and they don't like what's going on in their country any more than we like what's going on in ours. Notwithstanding, they have a government that is, I don't know. It's farther down the progressive road than we are right now. And Canadians are, believing Canadians are suffering because of it to some degree. And so Canada, in that sense, is not working in a way that's going to serve our best interests, unless we're willing to take the stand that, we might need we may need to reevaluate how we stand with Canada as far as letting people into our country that way.
Absolutely. Now, Levon said Canada is great, is a gate for human trafficking out of Michigan. It's really bad. So again, it's so bad that mainstream media isn't covering it, which is typically what they do. And we are all out of time again. This hour kind of just flew by.
It did.
Hope it flew by for you all as well. But we wanted to say, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your comments, your questions. Thank you so much for sharing this show with everybody. Please continue to do that. We do appreciate it. And until next time, take care. God bless you. We'll see you again next week.
Shalom.